3D CG anime. The very term strikes fear in the heart of a weeb, with the only thing having more negative connotations in the community being live-action adaptations. But with 3D animation being the mainstream in the West, thanks to studios like Pixar, why does CGI in Japan have such a bad reputation? In my personal opinion, Japanese studios are attempting to maintain the brand look of 2D animation when utilizing 3D computer graphics instead of looking for the unique benefits of what CGI can provide aesthetically. Other than that, anytime 3D is integrated in a 2D anime, they usually tend to look out of place. Not all the time, but audiences tend to only notice the CG when executed poorly, because when they're done well, they blend in with everything else. However, ever since the Spider-Verse movie came out, we've had multiple animated shows and films that utilize the stylized 3D CG look that displayed high levels of anime influence with their character and camera movement. And in Japan, Studio Orange has managed to create beautiful CG anime that takes advantage of its medium while still managing to maintain that classic 2D look. So I believe that 3D anime can work and is getting better and better. But I do also understand that most anime fans are specifically fans of 2D anime, which is understandable as it's all down to preference. That being said, I feel like many don't appreciate how far 3D has come in anime. So what better way to do so than to go back and revisit the very first fully CG animated Japanese film.
It's a pleasure to be at your service once again.
What the hell is even that?
This is a movie called A.Li.Ce, and it's Japan's first fully 3D CG animated film, which came out in the year 2000. Here's a quick plot summary. When a lunar voyage goes bad and a rocket ship crashes back to Earth, Alice Hayashi, the youngest person to ever go into space, finds herself thrown 30 years into the future, where a dictator known as Nero rules the world with an iron fist. Directed by Kenichi Maejima, the movie screened at the Fantasia 2000 Film Festival, along with the anime films Vampire Hunter D and Blood the Last Vampire. The film was also the first Japanese movie that was screened through a digital light processing display system instead of film. This format, known as DLP for short, is now the current market share leader in professional digital movie projection. Before diving deep into reviewing the film and learning about its production, let's do a quick run through of the movie. Spoilers ahead. The film starts out with Alice and a woman jet skiing away from masked gunmen in the Arctic. After being shot at, they end up crashing and both of them get knocked out. From afar, a guy sees the situation unfold, and right as one of the gunmen aims to shoot at him, he receives a call and orders his group to leave.
What?
An unconscious Alice dreams of her old friend Yumi's funeral. She then wakes up and finds herself at a cabin of the guy from before, who introduces himself as Yuan. He explains to her that the gunmen are called the Stealthers, who are henchmen of a dictator that controls the world, known as Nero. Nero's forces had attacked Yuan's village, and even though he managed to escape, Yuan's parents were either killed or taken away, along with the rest of the people living there. Alice tells him that she was on a space mission and that their shuttle ended up crashing back on Earth. That's when she realizes that she somehow ended up 30 years into the future and is now in the year 2030. Yuan ends up reintroducing Alice to the woman from before that turns out to be an advanced robotic waitress, model named SS1X, who was also part of the shuttle. Yuan had fixed her and redesigned her appearance.
Ouch!
That's sexual harassment.
Alice ends up naming her Maria, as she reminded her of the statue of Maria at the church where her friend Yumi's funeral took place. The gang is suddenly attacked by the Liberation Forces, a rebel group that fights against Nero. Alice, Yuan, and Maria manage to escape and hide in Yuan's original abandoned village. There they find a computer that they're able to use to gain some info.
I didn't mean to make a fuss.
Alice finds digital copies of old news articles about her, confirming to Yuan that she's from the past. However, the article is from the year 2010, 10 years after Alice's space mission, and it states that her last recorded sighting was at a hospital, allegedly after suffering from a breakdown due to her husband passing as a casualty of an unknown war. In order to get some answers, the group decides to take a train and head to the hospital that the article mentioned, which was now turned into Nero's headquarters called Kingdom. The train ends up being breached by the Liberation Forces. Alice manages to tranquilize two of the rebels, but then the train is attacked by the Stealthers. Suddenly, Alice receives a call on her old Nokia phone, and a holographic message plays out of Maria's eyes telling them to run.
I am coming.
Out of nowhere, the combat leader of the Liberation Forces, Kasuba, shows up and guns down 2 stealther soldiers. She then reveals that A.Li.Ce is Nero's mother.
No. It's not true. That's impossible!
Kasuba knocks out A.Li.Ce with an anesthetic and takes the group back to their headquarters. There, Yuan meets the head leader of the forces, Nikolai, who explains more about A.Li.Ce's history. Back in 2010, UN forces had entered the local conflict in Eastern Asia, which resulted in bombings in Japan that led to the death of A.Li.Ce's husband as well as her parents. After giving birth to Nero, A.Li.Ce went into a coma and has remained unconscious ever since. Nero ended up using his own mother's comatose brain as the basis for the SS-10X, a supercomputer system that he used to take over the world. Turns out the Liberation Forces were behind A.Li.Ce's time travel accident, as they needed someone with identical brainwaves to hack into Nero's SS-10X. A.Li.Ce agrees to help them in exchange for the Liberation Army to spare the life of her friends. Yuan is placed in a cell where he asks why they don't just use the time travel machine to kill Nero in the past, but Kasuba explains that they don't know what kind of time paradox that would cause, and can't take the risk.
Well, that's just lazy writing.
A.Li.Ce's mind is used to hack into the SS-10X, which then begins to shut down. After the SS-10X is taken offline, the Liberation Forces attack Kingdom, Nero's capital. Meanwhile, as Yuan attempts to summon Maria using her controller, she enters the scene by knocking a guard out, then revealing her new makeover.
Oh shit, she's packing heat!
When the Liberation Forces arrive at Nero's tower, they find a bunch of static stealthers who turned out to be mechanical puppets. As A.Li.Ce begins to experience negative feedback from the hacking, both Yuan and Maria blast through the wall, disconnecting her from the hacking machine, which leads the SS-10X to go back online. The security system in Nero's tower also restarts and shoots down most of the Liberation Forces rebels except for Kasuba. A.Li.Ce, Yuan, and Maria find a room with a space shuttle identical to the one A.Li.Ce was on during her space mission, which turns out to be the time machine. The gang fly off with the shuttle, planning to take A.Li.Ce back in time, but she asks them not to go back just yet, as she needs to confront her future son in order to understand what led him down this path. They land next to Nero's tower and manage to infiltrate it, and then run into Kasuba, who lets A.Li.Ce know that she was friends with Nero back when they were in the same orphanage. She explains his early obsession with computers, and how he began with the creation of the SS-2X, an upgraded version of Maria's robot model, eventually leading to the creation of the SS-10X system. Right after that, they're attacked by stealthers, and one of them manages to lethally injure Kasuba. With her last breath, she gives A.Li.Ce a card which allows her to activate the time travel capabilities of the shuttle. The gang heads up to the top of the tower, where they come face to face with Nero, who turns out to be the same figure from the previous holographic message.
I've come.
Nero explains that he had built the SS-10X in order to communicate with his comatose mother, but A.Li.Ce's brain had taken over the entire system, becoming one with it. The SS-10X itself explains that A.Li.Ce had always dreamed of seeing the quote-unquote real sky, how the original blue sky lost its hue due to man-made pollution, which were ideas Yumi used to talk about with A.Li.Ce. The SS-10X system decided to eradicate the population in order to counter their damage to the environment. The young A.Li.Ce explains to Nero that those ideas were simply ones originating from her dead friend, and that she doesn't truly believe in population control. The SS-10X system attacks A.Li.Ce and Yuan, but are saved when Maria stands in front of them, surprisingly causing the system to stop the attack before harming her. Suddenly, Nikolai blasts through the doors, shooting off some of the SS-10X's robotic arms, and telling the gang that after taking down Nero, he intends to become the new god of the world through his time machine. Right as Nikolai attempts to kill A.Li.Ce, he's stabbed in the back by another one of the SS-10X's arms.
Oh, look at that. I've been impaled.
As he's dying, Nikolai shoots the SS-10X, causing it to malfunction and begin to self-destruct. A.Li.Ce calls for Nero to run away with them, but he refuses, and gives A.Li.Ce his necklace, thanking her for giving him the chance to talk to a version of his mother in person. The gang run away as the tower begins to explode. Yuan stays behind to fend off the stealthers, but not before A.Li.Ce gives him a kiss goodbye.
Come over here and kiss me on my hot mouth. I'm feeling romantical.
Maria also sacrifices herself in order for A.Li.Ce to escape back onto the shuttle. As she travels back in time, Nero's necklace on her neck disappears. After the sun rises, Yuan emerges from the debris and finds Maria still alive and functioning, as she explains to him that she has gained all of Nero's data and has info on where to find people that were relocated by his forces, giving Yuan a chance to find his parents. The film ends with UN helicopters coming to the aid of A.Li.Ce, who crashed the ship in the ocean. As it turns out, the UN soldier that was there to save her wore the exact same necklace that Nero had, revealing that he is Alice's future husband. So, does the film hold up? Visually, no. However, it does have its pros. Like many time travel stories, the film does get a little convoluted. From the amount of details thrown at us regarding the world and Alice's history revolving around her friend Yumi, her husband, and her son Nero, along with his rise to power, to the very aspect of how time travel works in this universe. But seeing how Yuan and Maria's timeline didn't change as Alice goes back to the past, this is most likely a multiverse scenario. The film does manage to build an intriguing story and mystery, even though it had to pause so that characters can give their long expositions so they can explain everything. I say the pacing and atmosphere were done well. Though they're not the most complex, the characters were done well enough for the film to work. Some did come off as generic, such as Nikolai, while others could have been explored more, such as Nero and Kasuba. I would have preferred some changes to the story. Yumi's character felt a little unnecessary. Alice could have had those ideas about the environment on her own. Even though she wouldn't fully believe in the concept of population control, it would have been interesting to see her face off against a more radicalized version of herself in the future, showing how any belief, even one's own, can be taken to an extreme. And Alice did not need to be a teen. Her husband looks so much older and she's probably a minor in this film. I would have made her older and have her husband replace Yumi's character, then have him be the one that died, and Alice would go to the space voyage mission not long after, all while unknowingly being pregnant with Nero. No need for the weird insert of the necklace at the end of the film. This is obviously just my opinion. However, what is objectively bad is the dub's voice acting.
What?
This was still the era where anime had garbage English dubs, and this was no exception. Little to no emoting from the actors, inconsistent accents, and just straight up awkward line delivery. So probably stick with the original Japanese version on this one, unless you enjoy unintentionally funny voice acting.
And what a dork she was! Hey!
Shut up!
Sex harassment.
Maria! Aw, what a darling. Little man you really are.
So Nero is to be killed after all.
Sure do hope he is.
I'm so confused. You've just gotta stop confusing me.
Finally, jumping to the main selling point of this film, the animation. The CGI did not age well at all. It looks worse than the video games that were coming out at the same time. Textures on characters and the environment felt like they're non-existent. And they probably weren't, I'm not sure the limits of the technology at the time. And the characters look like they're made out of plastic. Their facial expressions are limited and their movement are clunky at best. But I can also see that in order for anime studios to learn how to use 3D technology, they had to start somewhere. Bruh. Despite all that, there is still a sense of direction with the visuals and their timing. In an interview with the director, he states that he got the job simply because someone at the studio saw that he was more or less competent with a computer, and he himself was excited to try out this new technology. Obvious difficulties came up when trying to get the film made. The CG team were used to working on short-form content such as commercials, so the feature-length production process was quite new to them. The CGI content makers at the time lacked the same sense of giving fluidity in the movement of the characters that animators had, instead relying on motion capture data. After the film's release, Alice got a manga adaptation by one of the production designers of the film, Hirosuke Kizaki. Sadly, he passed away in March of 2001, and the manga was discontinued. Though the film may not have stood the test of time, it still has an important mark in the history of Japanese animation. So that's all I had to say about the film. My name is Sami, and if you enjoyed this video and would like to see more, make sure to like, comment, share, and subscribe.